Let's talk about Ismaila Coulibaly. Now today's video is all about Ismaila Coulibaly. So what do we know about the Malian midfielder? He's a 23-year-old midfielder, and he's currently out on loan with Swedish side AIK. Now, believe it or not, and when you think about it, yes, I know this is true, but I also can't believe it a little bit. So Coulibaly has actually been a Sheffield United player for 4 years now. He joined the Blades in 2020 from Sarpsborg 08, and apparently he cost us around £1.5 million according to Transfermarkt. Now, despite having 4 years with the club, Coulibaly has only actually made 7 appearances for the Blades, and 6 of those have come across the 2 domestic cup competitions. Now, he spent the majority of his time, obviously, out on loan, and he spent his first 2 years with the club out on loan at United World sister club 𝗣𝗿𝗱𝗏. Now, this was originally supposed to be a 3-year loan. However, it was called off early after 2 seasons when 𝗣𝗿𝗱𝗏 were relegated from the Belgian league. Now, that's not the full story, though, because he did catch the eye originally when he first went across to Belgium in his first season, and this was 𝗣𝗿𝗱𝗏's first season after being promoted to their top division. They finished 9th. They were just 1 point outside of the European playoffs, and Coulibaly played a leading role in that team through that season. He made 22 appearances and he scored 5 goals, and he actually received rave reviews from the fans in Belgium. Don't know if you remember it at the time, but it felt as though every week while United were rubbish and getting relegated from the Premier League, we were seeing clips, we were hearing about the performances that Coulibaly was coming, and we started to be a bit excited. We thought, yes, let's get this lad a work permit and let's see what he's got to offer to United. In fact, his stock had risen so high that there were actually reports of a huge bid from European giants AC Milan. Apparently, they offered the Blades upwards of £10 million, and we turned it down. Now, in hindsight, well, you know, we all make mistakes. But you can see how highly he was rated and how well he'd done during that first stint that he'd had in Belgium, that there were even suggestions that somebody would be willing to pay that kind of money. However, it's from that point, from the point of that bid reportedly being rejected, that his promise really started to take a downturn. He stayed there for that second season, and as I've said, 𝗣𝗿𝗱𝗏 were relegated, and Coulibaly's role also dropped down. He still played about the same number of games, around 20 in that second season, but the reviews had severely gone down. He was no longer having an impact, didn't manage to score any goals during that second season, and I don't think either side were disappointed when United brought him back. I don't think 𝗣𝗿𝗱𝗏 really saw a future for him for them, particularly down in that Belgian second division. So in 22-23, United were now in their second season post-relegation, and Coulibaly was finally part of a Sheffield United squad. But as is the case with just about everybody that United try and sign, as everybody's aware, Coulibaly got injured, believe it or not, because everybody gets injured as soon as they come to play for Sheffield United. He had problems with his back, and that meant that he was really limited in terms of how much he could actually play for the Blades. But he did manage to play in the FA Cup, and obviously this was a really memorable FA Cup run. Coulibaly managed to get involved in games against Tottenham at home, Wrexham away, Wrexham at home. Played a big part in that FA Cup run, and it's important that we don't forget that just because he didn't make an impact elsewhere. Most notably, I would say, was that game against Tottenham. He played over an hour in that 1-0 victory at Bramall Lane, and I thought he put in a pretty decent performance. Looking back at some of his stats, he was really defensively solid. He was there being able to intercept, pick up ball recoveries. He was always trying to drive United forward. His passing percentages, the way that he'd driven the game and sort of dictated the play a little bit from United's perspective, were all really positive. And he did have one fantastic chance where maybe he should have done better when he was in on goal, one-on-one with a keeper. Not that it mattered in the end. Now, this season, he has actually made an appearance for United. He played 90 minutes in that awful game where we lost on penalties to Lincoln City in the League Cup. He was rubbish. Everybody was rubbish. I'll not hold it against him. But he has been out on loan since January. That's when he went and joined AIK. Now, he's done okay over in Sweden. The director of football at AIK used to play with him at Sarpsborg, and he thinks of him very, very highly. He's talked about in recent reports how he's seen him and knows the talent that he's got, but they need to get him fit. They need to get him more game time, and they're hoping that he can maybe realise that potential that they've seen in him in the past. Now, recent reports suggest that AIK would potentially be interested in keeping the midfielder permanently, but only if United would be willing to let him leave on a free. It's unlikely they'd be able to give us any money for the transfer, and therefore that potentially limits whether or not United would be interested in that deal. Now, Coulibaly has also had some international recognition this season. He made his debut for Mali in March 2023 in a 2-0 victory against Mauritania. He will be really hoping that he can kick on and be part of their team on a regular basis as they start to work towards qualifying for the 2025 African Cup of Nations. But what does all this mean? What is next for Ismaila Coulibaly? Now, given the reports were at the time that Chris Wilder didn't really want to sign the player in the first place, it seems really unlikely that he's going to work too hard to find a place for him in the squad next season. Now, our midfield looks to be probably the most settled part of our team. You know, we've got Andre Brooks, Ollie Arblaster, Gustavo Hamer, and they are an excellent long-term trio who could really lock down that midfield position for a number of seasons if we can keep all three of those players at the club. Obviously, there are rumours that there will be bids for a number of those, but if they stay, that's the long-term future right there. And so there's not really a role for Coulibaly to come in and be anything other than a sub at best. Now, we have also discussed the future. As part of this series, we have talked about the future of 𝗍𝗍𝗶𝗲-𝗏𝗏. Now, please do go and check out that video if you haven't seen it already. But it would also appear that he will be ahead of Coulibaly in the pecking order. And I think from what I've seen with my own eyes, I would probably agree that is the right decision. Now, Swedish media Football Direct have reported that United might be willing to let Coulibaly leave on a free transfer, which does mean that AIK are a potential option for his future club. But I think what that report really outlines is that whether he goes to AIK, whether he goes to somebody else, it is increasingly unlikely that he'll be playing in a Sheffield United shirt again. And I do think that's probably the right decision for both the player and for the club. I think despite all that early promise, it's just not happened for him. And so a fresh start somewhere else might be the right thing to do. But that's enough from me. We want to hear from you. Do you think that there is a future in a Blade shirt for Ismaila Coulibaly? Do you think we should gamble and try and drag out that last bit of promise from him that he showed originally at 𝗍𝗍𝗏? Or do you agree that it is time to cut and run, maybe let him go on a free transfer to get the wages off the books and let United move on? And let him move on, let him develop somewhere else. Let me know what you think down in the comments. It'd be great to hear from you. Now, thank you very much for watching this video. This video, as I referenced before, is part of an ongoing series we've got called Let's Talk About. And we're looking at some of those players who have been on the periphery of the squad, those where we've got those decisions to make about whether or not they have got a role for United going forwards, or whether or not it is time to let them go as we really go into the biggest rebuild of the playing squad that we've had in 10 years, 20 years. It's certainly going to define the next era of Sheffield United. Thank you so much for joining me today. It has been a rubbish season, but it is over now, and we can look to the future. We can start planning what the squad's going to look like, and hopefully we can do that with some positivity. Up the Blades.